The back of the room is right on.
All right, we're live now.
We're live.
We're live.
Hey.
As you set the tables up.
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing community organizing in action.
Well, what I like to do is just focus on the people for profits. Here we go.
So?
Now you guys have back up and sitting around, I guess.
Yeah, we want you to.
I know you didn't like sitting up here with the other.
Nancy made everybody sit in the front of the room.
It would be good.
Kevin, I really enjoyed her.
You like that?
She was great.
Well, I
We can
didn't
hold
like
this one
being
over
asked to
here.
move, but
What's your vision, Margaret?
It's whatever you want, Rebecca.
Can you see, you can capture this?
mine's
though?
20.
Yes.
It's very flexible.
We have a very flexible setup.
So can we provide the Pentagon and the outer ring?
Yes, you want to.
You can have the inner ring and the
We
outer
think you're
ring.
the inner ring.
Somebody needs to protect me. You better come up closer.
If you knew me, you'd say, we don't even want you in the room.
Nah, don't.
We take all comers.
All right.
So, Margaret, is there any introduction or anything?
Yeah, Kevin will introduce you. So we'll give it a few more
I
minutes.
don't know all the players, so you guys introduce yourselves.
Sure, we'll do that.
But I'll just.
Introduce the topic. I just swirled my drink to mix it and I just spilled all.
I didn't mix it on your computer.
Yeah, me too.
I hope we can find a model to make this kind of local investment.
I think, Bali's really picked up the,
Hollywood?
they're not doing it, they're promoting it. And I think that's a good start, because they're a big mouthpiece and they've already got the buy local folks by the throats, so I think that's all good. I did bring along a couple of handouts if people.
We'll write about this too, so
Right on.
summarize what was talked about.
Sounds good. I brought along the Securities Act of 1933.
Oh, thank God.
Yes, I know, for reference. In case we get a challenging question.
Wouldn't it be fun for a local stock market?
You'd be like, talk to your attorney. I still haven't decided what I'm gonna say, and she's got it all laid out. She gets paid to do this, though.
Hey,
The rest of us,
I didn't know
not for
that.
this, but you're a professional.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We're just like, we back,
What would Gladys Knight be without the pips, really?
I mean, seriously, I know.
I'm not saying your pips.
Just saying.
Well, you're a pips queen.
Yeah, right. Compared to us.
Did you say the pips?
The pips.
Gladys Knight?
Gladys Knight and the Pips, yeah.
Shoulder digging. You got it.
Here we go.
For those live stream people, they're like, wow, what is going on in Madison?
Local investing is fun.
Right.
Clearly you get to do this because we're having fun doing it,
We
right?
put the man in that.
We do?
So is it a full-time thing for all you, or you do it part-time, or how do you do it, how does it work?
Oh, no. Tara's independently wealthy.
Yeah, right.
Newly.
That helps.
Newly, but
No,
it's not a good reputation.
yeah, yeah.
It's
no.
not. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be. I'll tell, well,
Yeah.
when I introduce myself, I'll tell you this story, so.
Okay.
And what I do is do technical assistance to help people who get money. I help them get money and stay in business when they get money and get more money and that kind of thing.
What's interesting, so in
This
addition to helping
way.
the investment happen, you also help business succeed.
We do all sides of it.
Well, that's interesting.
And part of what I'm gonna talk about is I think you have to do all sides
I
of
like
it.
that.
Like you
I
can't
hope Nancy
just
comes.
expect that it will happen automatically.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's kind of we were talking about the Mondragon model, so yeah.
Do you do co-op investing or something you're looking for too?
Well, I
Co-ops need money.
Well, you're the chair of a co-op, and
Actually the treasurer of a co-op.
Which one?
The Hare River in Shelton.
and my partner is the chair of the Willie Street Co-op, which is the fourth largest.
Oh, the Willie Street, yeah.
So, and the Willow Street Co-op, in partnership with,
They help Yahara a lot during the startup phase. The co-op financing is its own unusual beast. It's different, there's a bunch of different things about it that are good and make it more difficult in the early stage to raise money, so. Yeah.
our local co-op here, also the Willow Street Co-op, has just started a fund to develop.
So it's a local vendor loan fund,
Yeah.
so what that's going to do is help, and suppliers to Willie Street, so.
So they help to fund the suppliers to help them.
Yeah,
Wow, very
because
cool.
one of the biggest challenges for Willie Street is they get in more supply of locally raised foods and well-raised food, let's put it that way, sustainably raised food, and it's difficult for a lot of their suppliers to get financing, so they're starting a local vendor fund. And that's one of the things that I do, technical assistance. So,
You guys have a local currency?
Come on in, have a
Yes, we
seat.
do, timeshare.
Timeshare?
Timeshare was started here, actually. Who is our person at, Mother Pools? Stephanie Rurick is is one of the big,
Early timeshare people?
yeah, nationally, this is what she's now doing full time. Yeah, Time Bank, that's what it is. That's Time Bank.
How close are we, what time is it?
It is 2:03.
Start right, pretty much.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. We used to, when I was here years ago, centuries ago, it was like, we had a Johnson Street place. There was a Johnson Street place to get. I don't know, is that still going?
No, that one is closed. I know exactly the one you're talking about. It is closed now, yeah.
there was one, there have been a couple over time.
But are there more, there must be more than in Madison, there must be more
Well,
than
Willow
one.
Street has 2 locations now.
Is it the third?
Yeah, I heard it.
Jennifer Street is still in
Mifflin Street
existence.
Co-op is still in
Mifflin
existence.
Street, Regent
I'm sorry,
Street.
Regent Street is the one I was
Regent
thinking.
Street?
Yeah.
Mifflin's closed.
Mifflin's
Yeah, I'm
closed.
sorry.
Jennifer's not closed.
This morning there was a guy.
Isn't it, it's not a co-op,
It's just a local grocery store.
There was a
Well, let's get formally started. Let's get formally started here.
Okay.
So what we're talking about in this session, there's a lot of talk about buying local and building local communities, that kind of thing. And Michael Schumann wrote a book a couple years ago, Local Dollars, Local Cents, that focused on local investing. And he advocated like local stock markets and putting your money into local businesses. And some people are finally starting to do this. I saw there's one out in a different model than yours out in Seattle. And you guys have LION, which stands for Local
Investment Opportunities Network. Yep.
And I don't know all three of the people who are here, so I'll let you introduce everybody and introduce yourself. And we can talk about how it's working.
Perfect, and we want to know what everybody else's hot button points are too, because there's a lot of bandwidth here, we can talk about a lot of different things.
Be here till 10 o'clock at night if we let us go.
That's right. So what I'll do is I'll start the introductions, pass it down the way, and then let's keep it going, because we'd love to know what your biggies are around local investing, or what your questions are around local investing, so that will target some of our thinking a little bit more. My name is Rebecca Ryan. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a company called Next Generation Consulting. And I started the Local Investment Opportunities Network as a volunteer project for the community. I read an article in a magazine about a group of local investors in the state of Washington who decided Wall Street wasn't going to help them, and the feds weren't going to help them, and they needed to help themselves. This was in the middle of a recession. So they pooled their money and they started to make that money available to local businesses who needed loans to either get through the recession or develop, expand their goat dairy business or whatever the case was. So I got on the horn with the guy who was the facilitator of that network, and I said, what does it take to do this? And he told me, and about 6 months later, we launched LION, the Local Investment Opportunities Network here in Madison. We now have about 24 investors, if you include spouses. There are a few people who do this as spouses or partners. We have, on paper, over $3.5 million that's available to invest. We usually ask, and I brought examples of the investor application and the request for businesses that they fill out, we always ask members, how much are you thinking of investing, or how much are you, thinking you want to put into the local investment stream, so we have a sense of that. And I don't know exact deal numbers, like I can't tell you how many direct investments have been made, because that is, that can be private. I am not a broker, all I do is I encourage people to join the investment group, and I encourage companies that need money to apply, and then I put them together. I make them known to each other. So I don't have direct data, but I do know that we haven't had any failures. I know that we've had 13 businesses come through. 2 businesses have come through twice requesting money. We haven't had any defaults that I'm aware of. I think that means we've had no defaults, because I'm pretty sure I would know. They would tell me. And we just see it as a very simple, elegant model to get money off Wall Street and put it on Main Street. A lot of people are just they don't know who manages their money. They don't know which companies they're invested in if they send money away to their 401k. So this gives them line of sight to their investment. They know who they're investing in and what the products are. Yeah. So that's a little bit about Lion. It's now my pleasure to introduce Tara Johnson and Mona Johnson. They're not sisters, although
Separated in groups.
Right, separated, exactly.
Clearly.
Yeah. But Tara represents kind of the business aspect of this, and Mona represents sort of the investor aspect of this. And Tara also has been working a lot on the system. Like this needs to be a whole sort of investment ecosystem. So why don't you guys go, and then we'll just keep going around there.
So I am Tara Johnson. If you go to the Willie Street Co-op or your local co-op anywhere in the country, or you go to a Whole Foods anywhere in the country, and you go in the supplement section, you'll see this can of whey protein, and it says Tara's Whey on it. And
Ta-da!
That's
Tara!
I'm Tara, yes.
No way.
Way!
No way! See?
Very
Oh,
fun.
The thing about whey is it provokes all these puns, like
Yeah.
constant puns. And actually, Tara's Whey was a pun. It's kind of like 2 puns.
Oh
if you
yeah,
think about it.
yeah, many puns.
Many puns. So yeah, it was intentional actually. So I started that company and had to build a plant. We were the only way you could have organic whey was to have a completely unique plant, because it had to be able to keep the organic separate. And it was a very expensive endeavor to do that. So I raised $14 million initially to start the business, and then subsequently raised money and went on to sell the company. So it went through a whole transition. And that was the only way we were going to get that plant here. I just read yesterday actually that they're going to double the size of the plant.
Wow.
Yeah, 20 million bucks coming back into the state, and that'll be another probably 20 jobs or something when that expansion happens. So hundreds of organic farms have benefited from my starting that company, because they get paid a premium now for the whey in a way that they didn't before. We're also the only goat whey protein company for nutritional supplements for humans, which means that the same thing is true for the goat people, that the goat cheese people used to have to dump whey, right?
Right.
They'd have to pay to get rid of it, and now they're getting paid for it. So lots of people in the state have benefited from that. So I learned a ton about how to start a business, how to finance it over its life cycle, and in sustainable food and agriculture, and things that I care about. So I have since been focusing on, people say, well, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, what I want to do next is help a whole nother generation of people do what I did, or their version of what I did, because I believe that for me is my greatest gift to the world in terms of getting better food and better farming and better local economies. So I do technical assistance. People call it technical assistance. So what that means is I help entrepreneurs raise money for their businesses. I help them keep, when the buggy starts like going a bit off of the road, I help them get the buggy back on the road, you know, whatever is pulling it off the road. And then people say, well, doesn't that just, you know, happen and then they go away? Like the Lion folks that I work with, don't they just get money and then they're fine? And I'm like, no, actually not, because companies that are doing well, constantly as they grow, they keep needing money, right? So it's kind of a continuous thing. So you get over one phase and then you have another phase. And the more we can create opportunities for that money to come locally, the better. All my investors were from the state of Wisconsin, actually. They weren't all from Madison, but they were all from Wisconsin. And so it is, and I had a local bank. Right, so that's another thing about keeping things local. A big bank from Washington, you know, that was based in Chicago or New York would never have done the banking piece of what I did. So it's really important to work with the local financing people when you work with people like this. So that's what I do. And I think other people will probably agree with this on the panel, that one of the things we've discovered is the technical assistance is absolutely critical to the success of the loans, right? They go together because we want these businesses to succeed. That's why we're giving them money. And it's hard business is tough, it always is. And so the more we can help them, give them the support to be successful, the better. So Slow Money Wisconsin and Lion and the Willie Street Fund are all new sources of locally generated capital. They all need this technical assistance and have, to varying degrees, normalized that in what they do. And that's my story.
Good work.
So I'm Mona Johnson. My partner John and I sometimes make loans to people and businesses we know. Most of them are local. Our savings are really modest and the loans are pretty small usually. We started when John made a loan to somebody who couldn't get a loan from the bank and needed some money to move forward with a project. And so the borrower was happy. He paid back the whole loan on time, so John was happy. John got the interest. And so we started expanding, so we did some vehicle loans, some small business loans, and some small mortgages. That's kind of how we started out. And then maybe because we hang out with Rebecca and Tara, more and more the loans are to local food providers. So we financed everything from tractors to kitchen equipment. And, maybe we'll save the details for later. Sure. Yeah, that's perfect. That's where we are.
Oh, you're gonna love this. I'm Steve, I'm from Waukesha, and I retired not too long ago. And all of my investments are in horrible fascist Wall Street.
It's the American way.
It is. It is. And I started early.
That's right.
And I sold metals for 20-some years and did pretty well at it. And so I've invested in, you know, what do they call those things? The company, the investment plans, you know. So I've got all these damn stocks and they're all horrible. So when I learned about ALP, now I didn't know anything about politics before except I knew I always voted Democratic. I've been voting for a Democrat now, debate me. So I'm full Green Party and radicalized now. But the thing is, then my mother died, and she left me 1,000 shares of ExxonMobil. And I knew I couldn't take that. So I sold it all. But in selling it all, I had an enormous capital gain. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just awful. I'd like to know more about it. You know, I can see doing divestment. Oh, I divested that 1,000 shares right away. I couldn't. Because I'm in 350.org and I just can't take that. But I'd like to learn more about local investment. That's why I'm here.
I'm from Minnesota. I retired a little bit longer than you, about 9 years ago. And I wouldn't own a stock for anything. Fortunately, you know, we're in a position where we can put all our money in CDs, with local banks, small banks. And the credit unions, you don't make much, but we have enough where it'll see us through until you finally get some politicians who will quit manipulating, the interest rates, and so we get a decent return. But there has to be some, stocks are not an option with me, and CDs are pitiful, so there has to be something else, and so maybe I can get something.
Yep, right on, cool. We were gonna go around and see what people's interest was in local investing, or if you have experience in local
Well,
investing.
we're here by default. We were trying to go to the
Democracy.
democracy.
What if,
Nobody showed up.
So we're sloppy seconds, huh?
What if
House
we
staff.
bring democracy to the United States? There's nobody there. Because they're not interested in spreading democracy.
I think there's some kind of event at the Capitol or something.
What's that?
I think there's some kind of event at the Capitol, a couple of demonstrations. And
there's a
that's
single-
all.
Well,
Yeah, it's like
nobody
when
said
they-
Maybe they're.
Okay, let's focus on this.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have to. I don't know.
You're here by default, it sounds
Well,
like.
yeah, I have stock. I'm not much of an investor. I believe in moving money from Wall Street to Main Street, yeah. That money talks, right? I'm from Gaithersburg, Maryland. My name's Al Poland. And I'm happy to be here at this shindig. It's really very good.
I'm Helen Poland. I also was in Petersburg with him, my husband. And my income now is either my retirement pay, my habits and my investments, and I have one other. It's paid by foundation from my father. And I'm retired, so everything is invested. And it's invested pretty widely in lots of different countries. And I'm still learning about investing. So it's good to learn something.
I'm Michael, local Madison here. Until recently, I worked at the University at the Center for Cooperatives, so I'm a co-op advocate and interested in how co-ops can fit into local investing.
Cool, thanks, Michael.
I'm also Michael. I'm a journalist and edit Occupy.com currently, and we definitely are always I'm interested personally and for writing about and covering new initiatives that are helping advance invest obviously in the economic sphere, anything to do with where people can put their money in better places.
I'm Dave from New Jersey. I would invest in municipal tax liens, and I would purchase discounted mortgage loans and then forgive them. There's no money in that.
Sort of negative investing.
Well, that's our family policy. Buy high, sell low.
That sign on the wall that says, we weren't intentionally a nonprofit corporation, it just turned out that way.
How our business is.
So I'm Ron, and I live in Madison now. I used to live in Baltimore. And I've been interested in the idea of investing locally and in your community for a long, long time. And when I was in Baltimore, we actually had an organization that surveyed the banks who you do all this redlining and won't make mortgages in certain neighborhoods and so on and so forth. And there was like no bank that was good. Even like small local banks in Baltimore weren't good. Even minority-owned banks weren't good. It was like horrible. When I moved to Madison 6 years ago, I was like excited to find that we actually had something called a community bank here, Wisconsin Community Bank. So I started banking with them, and then I found out, even more to my surprise, that they were owned by a company out of Iowa, a financial company, that had one of the pioneers in socially responsible investing, who had been, you know, doing this since like the early 1980s, which is essentially when socially responsible investing started. And so I was very, very excited about that. But there's a caveat that goes with socially responsible investing, which is that most places that do it, they have like a set of criteria for how they decide who they will and won't invest in. And nobody's criteria ever matches your criteria. So you have to, like, you know, find the ones that are close to what you want, or do it yourself. But I'm really, really interested in learning more about this kind of local investing stuff. And she's also overflow from next door.
I'm Jim Brewer. I'm from Honolulu. I lived there 37 years, almost half my life. I have a TV program. This is my 20th year. It's called Employees Today, and I've been an advocate for working families for a long time. But I was in nuclear submarines and got out and became an anti-nuclear person and a peace activist. And I helped organize stopping the nuclear waste ships from stopping in Hawaii. So they have to go around another way now.
All right.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of other things, but it's been 36 years of activism. Thank you.
Yes, I saw him sneak in.
Just saying who you are, go ahead.
My name's Richard Worthen. I'm from Alton, Illinois, which is 15 miles upstream from St. Louis. And I'm local Sierra Club activist, politician, agitator. I happen to think that I was involved in local government, county board, and I would think that there's one place that is the real key point where corporations can't stop us, and that's in food, local food. We have to have food. We'll kill to get food, or we'll organize to get food, or we'll do whatever we have to do to get food. And that, regardless of the fact that Monsanto's in St. Louis, and they're trying to destroy all our food so that they can own it and control it. I don't think they'll be successful at that either, because the heritage seed movement can't be stopped. And so I think organizing for the local food production and getting the act together with our own local bank or our local credit unions or rich sugar daddy or mommy, and or organizing ourselves for local food production and financing and the marketing that goes with that. Those people already exist. They're already out there everywhere, and they just need to be encouraged. And so those of us in the agitation business got to agitate and organize. That's why I'm looking for a banker.
You're looking for a bank.
Somebody wants to cooperate, and if they don't, we'll make one. Land is the key. I might add that I get around the state of Illinois, and I've been having my own personal little unscientific quest as to how much ground it takes to support a young person and his wife and maybe 2 little babies in Illinois. And found out that the answer is a whole lot less ground than most people think.
That's right.
The answer being 5 acres from a lady that's already in the business and doing it. Her husband's a 1,000-acre corn and bean farmer, and so she told him what she wanted, and he had bought it for her, and she's making money at it. so it works. And even some of the people that are in the corn and beans business, no.
Well, I think we've hit on a couple of sort of themes in our introductions. One is big versus small, right? So kind of Wall Street versus Main Street. And then the other is, I think, fast versus slow. And so many of you are probably familiar with Woody Tash's book, Slow Money. The idea that if we can just slow our money down, that is part of what's going to be required to recreate economic systems that work for everybody. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about how Lion started, because these are new, and they're not difficult to start. And for you in Waukesha, there's an organization called Fund Milwaukee. They might have some business. Fund Milwaukee. They're just like we are. In fact, we use some of the same forms. We're very friendly with each other. And I probably get 2 or 3 calls every month from cities like Ithaca, New York, and Portland, Oregon, and I think somebody mentioned Seattle, Washington. Folks who are like, can we make this work where we live? And the answer is probably yes, but of course you should check your local laws. In the state of Wisconsin, there is it's almost perfect for Lion, because we don't have any requirements that if Tara needs a loan for Tara's Way, I have to actually be her friend in order to loan her that money. There aren't any of those restrictions. Also, the way that we've set our Lion up, one of my biggies was I want people of any means to be able to make these investments. So very often you'll see investment clubs or venture capital clubs, but you have to be an accredited investor, which for those of you who don't know what that means, it means you have to have over $100,000 in assets, not including your home. For some reason, the feds think that if you have that amount of money, you have some sort of magical smart gene. It's $1 million? I thought it was 100,000. $1 million. Even worse.
It's worse.
It's
Yeah,
even
it's $1
worse.
million.
So if you have over $1 million in slush that you somehow are able to magically discern what a good investment is, and you're smart enough to do it on your own, Lion doesn't do that at all. We don't ask what your assets are. We don't care what your assets are. We care if you have a heart for investing locally, and if you want to see your money do well here. So the way that this started was me literally reaching out to a few people that I knew had a few bucks and had a heart for this community, and asking if they would be interested in doing this. And after we had kind of a critical mass of those folks together, then we started talking to businesses that we knew were interested in money, in getting some money. And they all happen to be, 100% of our businesses have been food-related businesses. Some of that's because we live in this area where food businesses, organic food is very important. But I think some of it also is because banks are clueless about how to loan money to farmers. So it meets a need. And the nice benefit of, one of the ripple effects is I believe Madison is a bit more food secure because we have this vehicle. So as I mentioned before some of you got in, I brought examples of our membership application. And if you'd like to make investments in Madison-based businesses, you're welcome to this. I also brought along a sample of what we look for businesses. It's not over the top. And I also brought an article that is an interview with Woody Tash that was in the Sun in 2010, if you'd like to read more about the concepts behind slow money. So this is all happening word of mouth. I did not get paid. This is my passion project. This is what I really care about. I want to help entrepreneurs get access to capital. I sort of want to give the fingers to banks because, as an entrepreneur, banks are great when you don't need them, and when you do need them, they are real jackasses. This feels like my sort of subversive way of being able to go around banks, but also, and this is the best side effect, is building community. It makes me so happy, like Mona mentioned, that she was with one of our businesses, Yum Tum Baby Food. They do organic baby food. They're catching on like wildfire. And were you with the girls mixing?
Yeah.
You were, yeah. So tell about that.
Well, Yeah, it's two young women, they now between them have 4 babies. And so.
Which is really just a focus group.
Yeah, yeah.
For their food
Right,
products.
it's all research.
Oh,
Our kids, what are kids, we
Right.
just feed them new
So
stuff.
total write-offs, exactly.
So one of them, it was like a week after one of the partners had a baby, and so they were short of help in the kitchen. They were all weekend in the kitchen producing their food, so they said, can you come in? So, I went in, put on a cap, and got my hands into a whole lot of kale, like 100 pounds of kale, a lot of dishes. I mean, it was fun. I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot. So, and I'll talk about that. And that's part of what's good about doing this.
And I feel like, unless you have specific questions for me, and maybe you will at some point, or maybe not now, maybe later, I want to turn it over to you two because, I'm just this person who's really excited about this, but you're a technical expert on how this happens, and Mona, you are doing a lot of these investments, and I think your experience really helps in there as well. So.
Just a simple question. I came in late. What does LIO stand for?
Local Investment Opportunity Network. And then you have to say RAR at the end.
Nicole, why don't you give the website address so in case they want to
Sure.
find you?
You're very good at this. Lioninvesting.org is the website. It's got tons of information, a lot of this stuff. I blog there, lioninvesting.org. In fact, let me write that down. Ooh.
A visual aid.
A visual aid.
Yeah, Wall Street does a different kind of line.
Yeah.
That used to be a comedian, man.
Okay, it's local investment.
Investing Opportunity Network.
Opportunity.
Yep.
So from my perspective, working with the businesses, what Lion has made possible here is access to probably the most difficult stage of financing for young businesses, which is, startup, and not just startup, but they got the $5,000 from their dad and they started something, but then they need that extra to really get any kind of scale and get going. And that's too early for banks, right? We are actually blessed with, one of you mentioned, with community-based banks here, and also Summit Credit Union, who does a lot of fairly impressive, to me, risky early-stage investments in support for food companies. So, but what Lion is doing is providing this capital at a really critical stage, and then because those businesses are now getting a little bit bigger, I have banks who are calling me saying, do you have food companies that we could work with? So it's like this whole change. Like 5 years ago, nobody wanted to look at a food company, and now even some of these more progressive local lending institutions are interested in doing it. So Lion is solving a problem in the financing world, but it's also spurring other things to happen locally because it exists, which I think is in other institutions. And I think that's really significant. So getting back to your thing about you need a bank, you may be surprised if you had something like this, you may get a bank because they kind of look up and go, wow, this is, if you have local banks, and there are places in the country that are local bank deserts. There's no local lenders. It's only Chase, or so. Yeah.
Are you doing just loan? You just loaning? If I'm asking duplicate questions.
No, you're not.
I apologize.
No, these are the first questions. Well, have you done straight loans?
Yeah, John and I do loans at this point, no actual equity investment.
Now, that doesn't.
Loans are you're charging.
Yeah.
How much?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
Are you using anybody else that's available to help with business plans?
That's what Tara does.
That's kind of what I do. You missed my introduction, but that's part of the technical assistance component, and it's not in Lion. Like I work with the businesses, and so I help them do business planning. I also do a lot of packaging, the whole packaging, so it's helping people look at their finances and go, okay, well, this is a good place for a Lion investment, but they may need a little bit of equity too to make that work, so then maybe we need to talk to this person about that, or I help them kind of sort through all of that. And my perspective, and I bet everybody would say the same thing, is if you want the Lion to work, and even the local bank to work, some form of this technical assistance has to be in place.
Yeah.
You have a score?
A score.
Do you have a score chapter here?
Oh, score, oh, that score, yeah. We do. We also have.
Are they helping?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I think,
That's
like,
free.
it's free, and like anything else, it, you know, every score person is not HRA experienced, right? So sometimes it's hard for people to tell, you know, but they're definitely a resource. The other one that's a national organization is the Small Business Development Centers, and they're free too. I'm free too, actually, for different reasons.
You should
so.
join SCORE, then SCORE is,
You know, the funny thing is, because I did what I did with my company, I am full. Like I have kind of
Clone yourself.
actually a waiting list in a way, because I know a lot about, you know, I know because I've been there and done that. And it
SCORE
makes it
needs
very
Tara,
different.
but Tara doesn't need SCORE.
I don't need SCORE, and in fact, it would be hard for me. Like, actually, what I really want to do is, next phase here is this cloning issue, that we need more people who know how to do what I know how to do. And so I want to work with people to get them ready to do that.
So why do you keep it separate from the line? Is it separate from the line, you said?
It is separate,
What's the
yeah.
rationale of that?
Well, all of these things bubbled up organically. So, you know, I'm not paid to do this. This is a passion project for me. So for Lion, this is about what I can do. Tara is doing this really in a very full-time, probably full-time plus way. And her piece is absolutely needed, and I don't think it has to belong to Lion. And in fact, frankly, I could be put in jail if I tried to do what Tara is doing, or if I tried to tell investors how to invest. So we feel like we all wear the same, we all play for the same team, but we all wear different jerseys. So, I mean, I would be putting myself in jeopardy if I tried to say, here's my business partner, Tara, and, you know, I just don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, there's all this securities law that makes these things difficult to mix up together. But it's kind of like why SCORE exists, to provide technical assistance, and banks don't provide technical assistance because it's a conflict in theory. So, but having said that, I think finding ways. So we're blessed because we started this, and she started this, and we have active projects and active companies, and now we're getting to a place where we have to figure out how to scale it.
Yeah, that's our big question right now.
Yeah.
Just a real quick, this is pretty amazing. We shared this with you prior to the, there's another organization in Wisconsin called Slow Money Wisconsin. They don't have a fund. They're just sort of like a organizing group. Slow Money Wisconsin, Lion, and Tara came together in May, and Tara and another consultant coached 8 businesses that gave 8 pitches in one day to a room full of Monas and Johns. And we believe that we created the relationships that in one day place money in every one of those businesses, 100% of the businesses, and over $1 million in money was placed. So when you talk about like the economic impact of what this can do in a very, you know, concentrated and orchestrated, I mean, it's tremendous.
And I will say that the other part that, because I work with a lot of businesses then, that was the other piece of this, that there's often people will go and pitch at something like this, and then they have no way to really execute on it, right? The business people don't really know how to do it, and the investors don't necessarily know how to do it. So after that, I was really busy.
Right.
It wasn't like, it was just before, but it was after, working with entrepreneurs to get everything in place so that they were ready to take the money. And in some cases, it was traditional lenders, so, who came in. So it's really exciting to see what can happen, and those are all local businesses, yeah.
So you're sort of flying under the radar as far as licensing.
Well, not really. I mean, we're not doing anything illegal. I mean, we're not flying under a radar.
Okay.
I mean,
They're just not going into things that they're not legally authorized to do.
right, like, it would be illegal for me to advise the member investors who are in Lion. It would be illegal for me to advise them to get into something, like, you
So like
guys,
pick this company and
Yeah.
that one, yeah.
But if you're, I'm not saying, I don't know what I'm saying. But if you're bringing, in a sale, a buyer, a seller together, in this case, you're bringing a borrower and a lender together, then technically that's brokering.
well, it's not because I'm not being paid. I'm not getting any kind of a commission. And I am not,
She doesn't know the details.
I don't
She has no
know
idea.
what, I mean,
So you're an expediter or a facilitator.
The networker.
I feel like I just facilitate it. So there needs to be a central place where people who want to do this local investing can get on an email list. And there needs to be a central place where people who want a loan from local investors can get on an email list. And I happen to be the person who puts the email list together. So I'm really sensitive about saying I'm flying under the radar because I'm waiting to get a call someday to say, like, what you're doing is illegal. That's why we've got good legal counsel in Joe Boucher. And that's why I don't know the details. And there are some investments I've made myself. But, you know.
I was just curious.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can understand why I'm sensitive. I support a family and run a business myself, and I can't afford to go to prison. So,
Why don't you walk through what happens when a business comes to you and
Yeah.
say, okay, maybe I want to get some money from local
Yeah.
investors. Why don't you go through the
Yeah.
logistics?
So, when a business says, hey, I heard about Lion, or hey, this is what usually happens. Hey, another person who got funded through Lion, I know them because we're in the same food hub network, told me about Lion, what do I have to do? So I send them this little capital request form that asks them what their name is, how much money they want, who their references are. They submit it, and then Mona and I usually review it, and if we feel like it's weird or something doesn't add up. Incomplete, yeah. We ask them to fill in the details, or there are some situations where the business is so new, or there's some things going on that will say, can you provide some projections? Or if you have a business plan, please submit it. And then after it's complete, I send it out to the member network, and with just some details, the website, if there's anything, I always will say, like, you've seen this brand at the Willie Street Co-op, you've seen it at Whole Foods Market, so that, because they might be familiar with the brand. And then I say, here's how to contact them, or if you want me to broker the meeting, I can broker the meeting. And I've never had an investor ask me to broker the meeting. And then I usually send a reminder 2 weeks later via email. So that's literally what happens from the capital request perspective. And then from the member perspective, we have a similar little sheet that says, why are you interested in local investing? And the reason I put this together is I don't want any vultures. I don't want people who are like, yeah, I want to invest $1,000 and make $1 million. And it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. I'm trying to make sure we have the right culture of investors who are, part of the network. So I read over their application. Sometimes if they're new to investing, I'll say, do you want to talk on the phone? Have you ever done something like this before? Or do you want to meet for coffee? And then they have an opportunity to ask their questions. I will tell you the hardest loan to make is the first one, because it's so foreign. People are like, I'm used to having somebody else do this for me, or I invest in mutual funds. I don't know, they make the decisions for me. So it's really interesting to put power back into people's hands, and sometimes, we have some
frozen.
Yeah, we have some very high net worth individuals who really want to do this, but they're terrified that they're going to do something wrong, or they're going to bottle it. So, is that good? That cover it?
Yeah, and also, we often know each other because Lion has networking
Right.
events as well. So there's usually a personal connection.
Yep,
Why don't your credit unions do this?
some do. Summit Credit Union does do some of this.
They do some loans, but, and they don't typically, you know, I've seen one loan for $10,000, but that's super unique. You know, that it really, for them to go through their underwriting process, because they too have to underwrite, it costs so much money that it's very difficult for them to justify doing smaller loans. That's why you have this big gap, this capital gap.
They do small loans every day.
Well,
Car.
With a vehicle as collateral.
with a vehicle as collateral, this time they have to go through the whole business and underwrite, and they're making a bet on the entrepreneur, so they have to do, underwriting is more complicated when they're looking at something like this.
There's also credit unions are held to, I believe, 13% of assets for member business lending. That's a federal law that they're trying to change to raise it to 20-something. So because credit unions are sort of chartered to be these not-for-profit financial cooperatives, they're not really, they weren't set up to make business loans, but they're given 13% of their assets to do that. So that's one issue where a lot of them are not willing to take on little loans because they're kind of saving that 13% for
Bigger ones.
the big ones.
Michael, what did you say the percentages they're trying to get raised to?
20-something?
Okay. Margaret, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what's the average amount of money that's loaned, and what kind of percentage of those loans are paid back?
I do not know of a default.
Okay,
So
oh,
at
that's
this
right, you
point,
said
I would
that
say
earlier.
100%.
Okay.
And I also don't know what the average loan size is. I can tell you what the average request is.
Okay.
The average request is, well, one of the things that we try to do is not take requests for less than $10,000. So if you need less than $10,000, we feel like that you can probably get that in a different way. We want to keep this at businesses who need bigger chunks of cash. But what I will tell you is that as our businesses are getting more sophisticated, they are asking, like, for example, a request just came through for $300,000, that's what it was, and they didn't, and they wanted to work with investors who were willing to make at least a $25,000 investment. So, you know, do the math, right? That's going to be at least 12 months, right?
Right.
So what I will say is the average request is now going up, and it's in that $25,000 to $30,000 range, whereas 2 years ago, you know, we were seeing requests for $2,500, or, you know, we need just this little bit to do this little piece. And I think some of that is because the businesses are getting better advice, and they're getting their act together. They've got their business plans together. There's probably, if you're from out of town, you will consume a brand that was funded by a Lion investor while you're here. If you drink and eat local foods. So it's pretty cool.
So you've covered really well what it was like from the investor side and the business side, but then once you step away, I think that's what I'm not hearing is what's that like. So if I give you the $25,000 and you have the business lined up, you just put us in contact. We work out the terms. Is there a rate of return there that gets brokered, or how does that?
Yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit about what we do. And I guess I'm going to provide a dose of reality here with everybody saying, well, you know, banks are terrible and stuff. You know, both John and I have day jobs. We're not wealthy. I think you used the word sugar mommy or sugar mama. So one of our first loans, the first payment, the guy wrote on the check in the memo thing, he put sugar mama payback. And I was like, because it's like, it wasn't really true, you know. So, but so I kind of made some notes about the process that we go through. First of all, when we knew we were going to start doing this, I drafted some loan documents, and that meant I just went out on the internet, I tried to find some loan documents, I kind of cobbled them together, what I thought we might find interesting, and then we went to see an attorney, and we had her review them, make sure they were compliant with Wisconsin law, tweak them so we didn't get in too much trouble. And there's different documents for different situations, whether it's secured with collateral. If the person who owns the business is married, not only would you maybe get a personal guarantee, but you have to get spousal consent. So there's a lot of a lot of documents in there. We try to keep them to fewer pages than a bank would do, so they're pretty short. Usually the main form is maybe 4 pages in bigger print than a bank, and then there's maybe 4 to 6 other pages. And as I said, the loans are to people and businesses we know. So if it's like a car loan, it's a little bit simpler. I mean, you take the car as collateral, and there's a fairly standard form, and then you go file that probably with the Department of Motor Vehicles in the state you live in. If it's a business, it gets really complicated. So it helps that John is a CPA, and that we both have some experience in this area, but we go out and visit. I mean, the kind of fun thing is we get to walk around farms, we get to cook in kitchens, we get to drive tractors, but we really try to understand their business. We try to get an idea of what they're going to do with the funds. Hopefully it's expanding the business or something that'll bring in more revenue. We try to come up with a cash flow statement, which most small businesses don't have. So are they really going to have the cash flow every month to make a payment? So then we figure out how much the loan will be over what period of time, usually based on the cash flow. So we have software that does pretty specialized amortizations, which I think you could probably get for $200. So things like a farmer who might not have so much income in the winter, maybe we do low payment January through April, and then we crank it up in the summer. So that you can't really do that with free software you find on the internet. We try to come up with a reasonable period of time. We look at all their financial statements, their tax returns. We go online and look at UCC filings, Uniform Commercial Code, to see what other loans they have and what the security is for those loans. Whether, if somebody says, well, take my van, if they've already got a bank loan and the bank has already used that van as security, it's not really very useful to us. And we try to figure out what other factors could affect their ability to pay. Okay, so now we've got all the terms worked out, and usually I sit down and work out the documents, send it to the borrower and say, does this look good to you? And once they say, yeah, we figure out, say if it's a tractor, you've got to have a serial number, same with kitchen equipment, even grain we've taken occasionally as collateral, and it's like, okay, we have 40 bushels of, red wheat, grain, from Kansas, and we go in and we look at it, it's like, okay, I guess this is good. So, it's a learning process for us. So I send them the documents, we get them signed, and then deliver a check. So that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Then we go back, I usually file the UCC filing online to say, okay, here we've taken this, whatever piece of equipment as security. Usually if the payment's monthly, we send a reminder, either snail mail or email when payment's due, and then I've got a calendar where I track, okay, Joe's payment is due on the 9th of every month, did it actually show up? Of course, deposit it, make sure the check doesn't bounce, record the payments. If somebody's late with a payment, usually we'll go out on the weekends, pay them a visit, try to find out what's going on, did they really just forget, or are they in a cash flow crunch? What's the story there? If there's a problem, we try to find a way to help them. Tara knows we have one now that's having a cash flow crunch. And we're spending days every week trying to help them at this point. If they make extra payments, we have to go back and redo the amortization. Same if they miss the payment, we have to go back and redo the amortization. Sometimes we have to rework the loan documents. Sometimes that's more legal fees for us. So I guess the reality check is, we do charge interest. It's certainly more than you would earn on a CD or savings account, but it's a huge amount of work. I think probably 1 to 2 hours per month per loan. So let's say you make 10 loans, you might be spending 20, even if somebody's in trouble, 30 or 40 hours a month, hand-holding, recording, doing paperwork, mailing out things. It's a lot. Right now, with our day jobs and that, there's really, we don't have much. So that's the kind of downside. So if you're interested in doing this kind of thing, you probably need a serious upfront time commitment to develop not only the loan documents, but probably kind of a procedures checklist. What are you going to look for when you go out and talk with somebody about maybe making a loan, what documents do you need from them? What documents do you have to have on file when you actually make the loan? There's a lot you need to do, and you probably need several $100s on attorney's fees just to start out. So if you're gonna make one loan here or there, I'm not sure that the interest you're gonna make on that is really worth the effort. The other risk you run is that I think money can sour relationships. And we haven't had this happen yet, but let's say you make a car loan to your neighbor and he gets laid off and he can't make the payments, or at least not on time. What's that gonna do with your relationship? I don't know. And so a lot of these businesses are one illness, one bacterial infection away from big problems. And I sometimes worry, we'll be there with them, but I hope that the relationship stays good.
So there's no, none of you are involved in like any revolving loan funds where you don't know who the money's going to, like if I just come and give you $100 and you say, here's your note, you'll get 2%, we're gonna give it to whoever we find as a viable business.
So Willie Street Co-op is starting the local vendor fund that I described before. And that fund will work that way. That right now, it's in a pilot that's about to launch, and that the funds that are being used for the pilot are from a small number of accredited investors.
So that's completely legal and that's all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people are waiting for the SEC to change some laws. There's a huge one right now. I'm really into craft beer, and there's a huge one now that's just getting people excited. As soon as the SEC changes the laws, there's going to be this huge influx of money for people to start microbreweries and nano breweries and all sorts of other cool things all over the country, because people are seeing the explosion in this industry, and they want to, help them out. They want to make a little money too.
They want to drink good beer.
They want to drink the beer.
So the Willie Street Co-op, though, one of the things that's really unique about that, because they are a co-op, is that once we get proof of concept, and it's a lot of process, right? Like what Mona just described, Willie Street is going to have to do, basically. So they want to get all that in place. But just like Willie Street used, they raise money from members to fund their expansion.
Right.
They can raise money from members because members are owners, right? So you are technically an equity owner in a co-op, right? So the intention there is to make it possible for any member of Willie Street Co-op to be an investor in that vendor fund. That's the intention. And right now that's a legal way to have non-accredited investors invest.
Well, back to his point though about line of sight versus putting your money in the vendor loan fund, will the investors know who the farms and suppliers are?
Yeah, the idea would be they would know who they are, but it isn't like Lion where I'm having a personal financial transaction with you.
You're basically giving over your faith to somebody else and saying, here's my money, I trust you.
The Willie Street Co-op
do the
right thing, right? Yeah.
And not everybody's going to do what Mona just described, right? It's actually quite difficult to do that for a lot of people, and so.
I feel like probably most of the people here are more interested in the a lot of people talk about the divestment from, their 401ks or wherever, where they don't know where their money's going. They just want something that looks like that, but they have a little more transparency.
Yeah.
I would mention there's a North Country Development Fund in Minneapolis. They take money and then loan it out to cooperatives, and they have a pretty good, I think it's 5 or 6% return. And that's, I believe, I haven't looked into it too much, but guaranteed. Because it's North Country Development Fund. Now you have to become a member, so it's like $100 or whatever, and that's just sort of put aside. I don't think that gets invested. That's just sort of your equity in the fund, and then you give them however much you want. There's
they
terms
do a
and
lot
everything.
they act kind of like a central, in a way, like a central lender to co-ops. So that's their, so Willie Street doesn't need money from a lender right now, but over in the past they did, and that was kind of, so they're kind of a, I don't know, an umbrella lender for co-ops in a way.
But they don't need to have that one-on-one relationship with the people who are giving the money, because they have such a big portfolio now, and that they have, the co-ops are paying it back at such a rate that they can then payback the investor is guaranteed.
So would it be legal to take your function of kind of managing the investment, to have that kind of have people working for Lion who did that for investors? Would that
Be
be
licensed.
a license? Anything else? I think that people want to be able to invest locally, but it needs to be simple.
Yep.
They want you to list, here's some local projects, here's the kind of money they need.
Mhm.
If you invest in
Yep.
these, we have someone who will manage that for you. And here's the rate of return we're expecting from it. But that gets to be much more.
I think that's where the co-op is going with this fund.
Yeah.
It's just starting.
Yeah, and the issue, it is very difficult under SEC regulations to do that if you're gonna take money from non-accredited investors. So the hurdle for an organization to get organized to do that is pretty high.
'Cause I
And
think
that's part of why.
Some credit union, I think, is backing that, is why there's sort of, that's why the SEC isn't like probably freaking out, because there's a financial institution behind it that if things go sour, if it all falls apart,
Yeah,
there's somebody to go to.
exactly.
to
You want
say,
Willie Street has.
In the
back
Willie
there?
Street, yeah, Summit is also, is involved in it as well. But the seed money came actually from accredited investors, so there isn't an issue with that.
We have it in the back in the Cubs hat, and then
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know if you've heard of RSF, Brito Center for Social Finance, Don Schaefer, Valley, which has, RSF's whole mission, or one of their missions, is to reimagine money and transform the way the world works with money. They have webinars along with Valley. Don Schaefer, who's the president of that organization, was one of the founding members of Valley, which is the Business Alliance of Local Living Economies. So they have a whole arm of Valley, which is trying to develop community stock exchanges in Boston. There's a group of people in New York and Boston that are getting around with the B Corp business, B Corp people, I don't know if you know them, getting around all these securities regulations. And a guy out of Vancouver called Joel Solomon up in Canada, Renewal Capital, along with Leslie Christian, whose portfolio of 21 investments in Portland, Oregon. But anyone that's interested in the things you're talking about, I think between going on their websites and I know Don Schaefer at RSF Social Finance would finance any of the causes that you're talking about. I don't know what his parameter, I mean, they've grown, they're probably the largest of their ilk today, and I don't know.
They're by far the most sophisticated
Yeah.
too. Like they have a debt fund for investors, they have an equity portfolio. They're very, very far down the developmental path compared to what we are here. It is, and what you brought up, we do need some changes to the SEC laws to make it more feasible for non-accredited investors to get involved. One of the things that Bali has been championing recently is something very simple that a bunch of the people I work with in young stages do, which is prepayment things. So like a CSA model where you prepay for shares of vegetables, getting applied to meat or cheese or beer, or there's absolutely no problem with that. So, and that can provide cash flow to a young business at a time they desperately need it in that early stage. So, I mean, so that in a way is a form of investing in a way. Yeah.
Also
And
like
that's
the
something that anybody
cooperative model
can
as
do.
well as, when whatever business you start, if you're gonna serve consumers and you want a consumer cooperative, you go out and make a membership and you ask for $50, $100, whatever the membership fee is, and then you get that sometimes for the fourth business when it starts. Because there's no terms that say that money's ever gonna be paid back, or that you're actually gonna start a business once you say, well, I'm gonna be a member,
Right.
So,
Did you have a comment?
Well, two, actually. One was about startups in particular. I know data shows that like over 50% of startups fail. And the biggest reason they fail is because they're undercapitalized. And so I think, this kind of thing for startups is like awesome because it could help them with the fact that no matter how well-intentioned and how thoughtful the people are going into things, they seem to always underestimate what the cost of doing business is going to be, and they wind up failing because they don't have enough capital to cover what they thought they would have enough capital to cover. So this could be good, and it could get them over the hump, because it's not to say that they have a bad idea, it's just that they couldn't figure out the financing properly in the first place, which is really hard to predict. But I also wanted to make a comment, I don't want to divert too much from the main theme, but what you said before about this place that you think maybe is guaranteeing 5%, I know enough about financing and investing to know that there is really no way that anybody can guarantee paying above market returns unless they're running something that's like a pyramid scheme, which means that they keep getting more money coming in so that they can keep paying people back. And that's how we get the Michael Milkins and the whatever, the Bernie Madoff and all those people that we all know and love so well. So be careful if you see anybody trying to guarantee you something that sounds too good to be true, because as probably P.T. Barnum said, it probably is too good to be true.
I thought I have a kind of a couple of things here that I thought we might want to talk about in terms of barriers and also next steps. So we think that what we're doing in Wisconsin is pretty cool with the investing in our local food system and really kind of focusing there. But should we talk a little bit about barriers first? Like when you think about, let's just all take it, you know, when you think about the barriers that you see and have stopped you from doing good work, what have they been?
So I think in my, this is me from the perspective of working with clients and things. I think what Mona, the process that Mona described is not possible for a lot of people to do. I mean, you need quite a bit of financial acumen on your part in order to do that, and time.
Yeah.
And that's
and not all of our investors do that, by the way. As an investor, I don't do all that.
Yeah, so, I mean, you could not do all that too, you know, but it's, that's a barrier. I mean, it's also a barrier just psychologically for people to do direct investing. That's kind of what you were talking about. You're used to your 401k, they kind of manage it, you know, you kind of make like some allocation selections every once in a while, but you're not picking companies, you're not following stuff. And so that's a big change. Yeah. But I think one of the things we have to remember is that Main Street used to work this way. Like Joe had the hardware store, and he knew the guy, you know, who had a son who really wanted to start his business, and he wanted to have a grocery store. And so Joe would help the boy who wanted to start the grocery store. He'd lend him money, and when things went awry, he'd coach him. You know, there was this culture around small business that was very supportive. And we've lost that. I mean, we don't have that culture anymore. So one of the barriers is, and kind of why I do what I do, is we got to recreate that community around small business, because, you know, I think we've kind of demonized small, you know, business because we associate it with Republicans and they're bad and all of that. But really, there's this rock part of what we do in our culture that is small businesses, and kind of stimulating the culture around small business is something that is really important. And we're kind of like institutional replacements for something that kind of used to organically happen.
That's
right. Well, the first barrier is what we've all been talking about, is that there's no place for the person who has $1,000 or $10,000 or just no time to make money and feel like, okay, I'm comfortable putting my money in this local investment fund and it'll be taken care of. The second one is we've almost had too much good PR about local food. So, but there's some businesses, and Tara has been good at pointing this out, where there's not enough of a local market. So if you start, well, we talked about the baby food. There's just not enough babies in Madison to support a local and so
organic baby food company.
So it really has to be a broader market, and I'm not sure that we're doing state or a larger community a good enough job marketing these companies outside of Madison?
And what I would say to that is, I feel like we have this institutional bias for companies that have 1,000 jobs, or that, that do it. So when Tara talked, when she introduced herself, and she said that her namesake organization, Tara's Way, will invest another $20 million in a plant and hire 20 more people. 20 more people for our economic development organizations isn't even enough to make them get out of bed. They are not excited about 20 people. And that's one of the things as a small business owner that really honks me off about thinking about growing small businesses, because I really believe that the days of the Ford Motor Company plants are gone. We will be growing our economies 20 people by 10 people by 5 people. So to support, one of the barriers is the demand side. Do we have enough babies in Madison to support an organic baby food company? But there's also institutional bias and barriers against getting excited about the butcher who has 7 employees and is going to add 5 more because he's going to add goats. So I do feel like we have to wear capes, in order to try to tell these stories of these local superheroes. The other thing that I will say, I don't know that it's a barrier, but it's something that scares me a little bit, is very often for our local businesses to scale, to get bigger, money comes in from usually the coasts. And then the string with that money is eventually they want those people to come out to the coast. They want them to move their businesses. And I am so tired of seeing the backside of our smartest people because they had to follow the money. So I think one of the barriers is getting people friendly with the idea that they can invest in their own backyard. And I think the notion of making it simple and easier, I do want to think about that, because not everybody, I don't do the 15-step process that you do. And I feel like a D student now. Now that I know that that's your process, I'm like, God, I'm so going to flunk this class. But,
yeah, so one of the things that I'm doing, coming up in the fall here, and it'll be within the university in extension, is something called a food finance accelerator. And the reason I'm doing this is within the university, we can help on an educational basis get people feel more comfortable about investing. So some of the understanding of this. Some of this is just like, I don't know how much you know about food, but I know people who have money and who actually could do everything Mona did, but they don't know food. Like, they don't know how to tell whether a food business is going to work or not, right? So, from the vantage point that I have, I can say, this is the kind of thing that's working and this is what isn't working. So when you're a local investor, you know your entrepreneur, so you can also help your entrepreneur, right? I'm going to invest in your company, and I know that, you got to get this kind of scale or this business isn't going to work, so I'm going to help you do it, right? It's a very different thing than just, I'm going to go to a bank and get a loan. Nobody's helping you do anything. You're just like, pay your, so I think we can, some of these barriers we're going to be able to, if they're here, we can take it down a notch, right? We can't solve the problem, but I do think we can take it down a notch to make it a bit more approachable for people.
I don't want to just talk about barriers in work too, because part of the reason we do.
I was just going to say, why do you do it, Mona?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, John and I are fairly new to Madison, and so this is a huge social life for us and a way to connect with the community.
Planning in wheat bins?
Yeah. Well, would you rather just sit in a bar and drink? Yeah. So it's fun. I mean, we might not be getting rich off it, but it really is enriching our lives. I mean, we've learned about moisture levels in wheat and where to find the best butter and when to harvest basil and how a commercial kitchen works. Where else? Like, I got to drive a tractor. I mean, where else can you do that kind of thing? So I think there's a second kind of reason that's just to enrich your life. to do this, so I don't want to paint it as all wood and no clay.
Where do you get the best butter?
Go for the hand-rolled Amish butter.
Amish butter.
I mean, it comes in a thing like this.
The problem is it's enough butter, it's like, if you live by yourself.
Not in our
right?
household, it goes.
Please say something, that's not fair.
Maybe we should form a CSA of the Amish hand-rolled butter.
Amish butter. And part of this is different like that, what I talked about, the businesses, like what businesses are looking. That scale issue, if you're a food business in Chicago, is totally different. Right? On a good day, we have 400,000 people here in the metro area of Madison. That's actually, not that many people really when you're trying to do organic baby food. You need a lot more than that, right? So, but if you were right outside of Chicago, you have millions of people, right? So some of this depends on where you are too. It's not the same nationally.
And it helps if you're willing to take payment in cheese, pork.
Enough tomatoes to
Right.
pave your big driveway, yeah.
Well, but you talked about a CSA, but we also try to buy from these people, and so we have one cheesemaker, and if he's not having a good month, we've got like 20 pounds of cheese in the fridge, we go buy some more cheese.
Yeah.
So we kind of eat our profits, I think.
So profits are full.
Yeah,
They are for,
That's
yeah.
right.
Did you say earlier what pricing, so if someone should raise, say, 10, but if they already have 10, 5, 10,000 startup, that's the point that they would come to you after an initial?
For Lion, we like to see requests that are at least $10,000 because for the amount of work that an investor goes through, doing less than that almost isn't worth it.
They should have already had it. You don't want them to come to you as an initial, someone should already have had built up an amount of capital. Right?
Typically they're like stage 2, or they've already proven that what they have is going to work. So we're usually not the first, like Tara was saying, we're usually not the first ones in. They usually tap their parents for that or their grandparents for that.
So it isn't, Lion isn't like micro-lending, like hardcore micro-lending, when the loan would be a peer-to-peer loan of $500. It isn't like that. And I think in a way, at least here in Madison, the bigger gap actually was what Lion fills, like, because people do tend to be able to figure out a way to start. And I would encourage efforts to get prepayment, some kind of prepayment for things, and maybe Lion can do something, I don't know, but because that can solve that really early thing too. If you're gonna, I made cheese. He did a cheese CSA, and he did a cheese in the month club. So you pay, whatever the fee was, and then you're getting cheese every month, right? That was his early $10,000, right? So there are kind of mechanisms for doing that. Getting people to think about, so one of the other things I'm going to do in this accelerator is to get people to think about money as this continuum, that you start out in this little phase and you need a certain kind of money, and then you need this kind of money, and then you need this kind of money as a business grows and is successful, because that's what we want them to do. And we get to plug the holes all the way along the way. Like mainstream capital has done it this way. We got to emulate that in a different way, right? So we have to have our ways to do it early stage, and then what Lion is doing, and then, ultimately for Mona, instead of having a VC firm or something, the takeout is probably some credit union or something like that.
And we have had that happen.
Yeah, and that's what we want to have happen.
Exactly.
Because now that business is in a lending organization that can still live in it as they grow. So that's what we're trying to replicate.
We have all this fancy business talk, like the takeout. You know what takeout is for me? Like how long?
Chinese.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, final questions or last words from the panelists? Let's start with the audience. Any final questions? We're just at 25 after.
So, groups like yours that are elsewhere in the country, is there like a
Yes.
resource page or list where you would see yourself fitting into some people who aren't, you're mostly local, I assume.
Yeah,
from California.
right.
All local.
All local.
Yep.
So what would be comparable?
California is not set up for this. Their laws are really bitchy about doing this kind of stuff. So like Jenny Hassan at Cutting Edge Cap, I mean, they're trying to figure this stuff out, but it's tough. I know that Ithaca, New York, Portland, Oregon, Milwaukee, I believe there are people up in Minneapolis. There isn't a resource page that I know of to point people to. Bali might be the closest because they've really been pushing this concept at their last 2 conferences. So they might be the closest, but I'm not sure.
And Bali is also doing, you know, the prepayment, and there's some mechanisms for that now, so. What is that called? Software. Anyway, yeah, so Bali is a good resource. But it's definitely emerging, we're all learning as we do this.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
Usually learning.
Usually learning,
I can't
yeah.
get it out of my head that you're not talking about anything new, nothing new. This is the job of the local banker. It has been forever. And now I'm speaking out of ignorance because I haven't done it. But if it's been done before, why? I've heard a lot of discussion about how difficult it is. I mean, it's simply a matter of doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
You've got to market and keep track of it, keep track of people.
Because it's not profitable enough if you have to have a big bank
If it's
building.
not profitable enough, then it's not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen.
Well,
Not necessarily.
yeah, I think what happened in a
Let
lot of
me
communities.
finish up. My father-in-law was a farmer. And he had his farm sold out from under him by his dad, who owned the ground. So he went to work managing farms. He knew what farming is, and he's the guy, he's you, I guess.
Yeah.
Because he knew whatever he needed to know about farming, and he could make those decisions. That was his job as a vice president of a local bank in Morris, Illinois. And they made a whole bunch of money off of him. And it would seem to me that if that could be done with farming, it could be done with doing all the things that a lot of us want to do, and helping small people, with individual entrepreneurships, get going. And if nothing else, you set up your own advisory councils and do that.
Yeah, and I think part of what happened in the last recession, because of,
Find a banker's going to cover your butt.
yeah, I mean, like their lives became hell. So they, shit rolls downhill. So it happened to me, right? I have a big loan from a bank, and my life became hell because his life was hell. And we're still kind of in that. I mean, I think I see much more activity now, but there was like, for a while, it was like, we are not lending. And so these businesses, there was no way. And it's thawing a little bit. Then the other thing I would really be worried about, all of us should be worried about, is the demise of small local banks. I mean, they're getting rolled up into these big ones, and they're not interested in the little butcher on the corner. They don't care.
And you get one started.
Yeah.
Start it.
Start a bank that has happened.
It's not that easy.
That was the session upstairs.
Yeah, that's
Public
right.
banking.
Yep.
It's a shame these two were at the same time slot.
Well, he's gonna be on the panel tonight, because I read up
Ellen
on, right,
is.
isn't he?
Well,
Yeah.
Ellen is, and actually, the Public Banking Institute is part of this Economic Democracy Conference. Sunday's going to be a day of public banking. We have Kurt von Mettenheim from Brazil, who's an international expert on public banks, and then Mark Armstrong will be presenting on the roadmap to state public banks.
So Sunday at
Public
11.
banks are the same as a community bank, obviously.
Right.
That's not starting your own bank.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yes.